The question of the levying of a tax for the Community Health Mental Health Board, and I'd like to ask Speaker Cowan to be recognized to introduce this item.
We need to put on the, we need a motion first.
Oh, I shall move.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Motion by Ventura, seconded by Mueller. Discussion, Speaker Cowan.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I asked to be able to make some comments about this because I was the one who initially brought it to the Public Health Committee and asked them to consider this. This is a constituent initiative, frankly. I received in my area, I think as in all of our areas, there's grave concern about mental health and mental health services and substance use disorder services. And there's been a lot of talk in my area about the creation of a 708 mental health board, and I was asked a number of times by constituents why Will County didn't have one. So I asked the Public Health Committee to look into what that would look like and if there was a taste for it. And I'm pleased that it passed through committee. To clarify, we are only asking today whether or not we should ask the public if this is a priority for them. When we talk about funding, I think we can all agree this is a priority, but we need funding for these services. And as the executive director of our health department pointed out, we do have these services. But a 708 board, I think there might be some misunderstanding. This doesn't create a new health department. It doesn't create a new organization to dispense of these services. It creates a funding line. And I think if these services are important to our community, as I believe they are, it is our responsibility to make sure we can pay for them. This 708 board would provide essentially a locked box. The funding, instead of being up to the whims of the county board on every year of how much we were going to be able to allocate to the health department, we would be able to have a dedicated stream of revenue for these services. There's every possibility that that mental health board would decide to fund the health department with these services or other related organizations. So, of course, it's not our job today to decide whether or not to have a 708 board. It's our job to say whether or not we'd like to ask our residents to weigh in on this. And I think it's appropriate to ask them. And so I would ask everyone's support in adding this referendum to the ballot so that we can get a gauge from our constituents about whether or not this is something they'd like us to pursue. Thank you.
Thank you. Leader Brizzolone.
Yeah, first, I was unaware of the fact that the Board of Health isn't doing their job and that our health department isn't doing their job. You know, adding more taxes onto already overtaxed constituents. If you want to raise the county levy and afford more on the levy for the health department, that's your prerogative. You guys have the majority. But to add another tax on and take total control out of the county board's hands, obviously opposite to what the speaker is saying, this is a county board's decision. We're going to leave it to another board, which of course won't be picked by us. I don't understand where you're going. I mean, you heard the director of our health department tell us we are providing these services. If you just want to tax more, just raise the county tax. You're going to probably do that anyway. But to put a whole nother tax on, which can go up to, I mean, I know the numbers that we're hearing, but if you look at what the first speaker was talking about, the small amount, the 900,000, yeah, they have 37,000 residents. We have 700,000 residents. Are we going to be taxing $300-400 a house in my neighborhood, in a lot of our neighborhoods? You wonder why people are leaving Illinois? This is why. Spend your money wisely, but don't just add on and add on more taxes. Secondly, I honestly think we ought to postpone this vote, because all it was at the health department. Now, I understand we bring resolutions forward that come from the health department or any other committee, but this is about adding a referendum to ask people about taxes. We have no idea what this is going to create in money, what the anticipated thoughts are on what percentage we're gonna tax? Shouldn't some of that be discussed in front of the whole board? Maybe you need to do a committee of the whole, or at least bring it to executive. But you have it at one small committee, the Public Health Committee, and you're gonna ask this entire board to vote on sending a referendum out to add additional tax and to take board control of how money is gonna be spent. Now, if you all do pass this now, without further discussion, I'm gonna have to say I'll be voting against any additional monies that go to the health department. And maybe we ought to take away the money that they're getting now for mental health, because this board will decide everything. Secondly, and I've said this many times, we have $134 million of ARPA money. We haven't given out a nickel yet. It's been over a year and a half. We're already in some of the pillars allocating 15 to 20 million to mental health. Don't you think we should give that money out before we go to the taxpayers and say, we want to tax you some more, even though we're sitting on a pile of money here that can go for mental health right now? So, when appropriate, I make the motion we postpone this to at least get some more information on what this is going to cost our taxpayers before we put something on the ballot to make ourselves look ridiculous. Thank you.
Make a statement.
Hold on one second. So now we have a motion and a second, motion by Pizzolone, seconded by Ballard, to postpone this resolution. So we'll start off with County Board Member Ballard. So now we are speaking on the postponement. It'll probably cross over though.
I'm looking to postpone it forever because we've got seniors, you're talking about mental health, they can't afford food right now because of the cost of all the natural gas, the electric, the car gas, the cost of food going up all the time. So now you're gonna make them mentally disturbed because these poor seniors that are on a fixed income can't afford any more money. And we're talking about raising money, especially in this type of environment with everything going up. The stock market crashed again today. Their 401ks are going away, the ones that actually have them. I think it's a crime to even think about this. So I'd like to postpone it forever. But thank you, Mike, for doing it now.
County Board Member Weigel.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of an additional levy and this additional tax. I think our health board department is doing their job. If you do create a new board, they may want a new building, which could be much more costly and what have you. So I'd agree to postpone it, but I think we shouldn't even go into this having a new board. Thank you.
Thank you. County Board Member Trenier.
Yeah, on the postponement, I don't see a need to postpone. All we're doing is putting a referendum on the ballot. That's what we're voting on here. We're not voting to tax anyone. We're letting the voters decide if they want to pay an additional tax for community mental health. We're leaving it up to the voters. And every board member here is a voter and will be entitled to vote on the question of levying a tax when they go to their ballot box in November.
County Board Member Berkowitz.
Thank you, Madam Executive. So I'm not in support of an additional levy or an additional tax, and I would like Commissioner Ventura and our secretary to provide us with some information now before it's postponed, or before we're forced to vote on something we had no information about. So what I'd like to know is who will have authority over this board. I'd like to know who will sit on this board and what the size of the board is. You must have discussed this in order to bring it forward. So I'd like that information, and I would also like to know, probably, I'm not sure if it would be the treasurer's office or who would know this, What is the cost to bring forward this referendum? So if we could have that information, I would appreciate it.
County Board Member Ventura, would you like to reply?
It's in her packet. It's been provided both at the committee level as well as she at caucus and then again today. So she just needs to read her packet.
I don't think it takes an extra effort to provide those answers. We've got people in the audience. We also have constituents who don't have the benefit of having this information. So as a courtesy, I would request that it be disclosed.
Would you like to,
The end of all the comments.
regarding her questions?
Hers and others, yes.
Would you be willing to wait till, she is coming up in a few members. You mind waiting? If you don't get your questions, we'll come back. All right, thank you. County Board Member Moostis.
Yes, thank you. You know, we're all for mental health, but let me tell you how I feel we provided it. You know, when the state kind of bailed out on mental health a number of years ago, and they did that by closing facilities, cutting funding, and basically said, we're gonna push this down to the local health departments. And the health department should do the mental health, and we'll give grants to the health departments to provide mental health. And they do give us grants. I know Sue mentioned the levy, but also grants come from the state of Illinois to help provide mental health. So obviously the state of Illinois didn't say, well, we think we're gonna send this money to health boards. They said we're gonna send it to the health departments of the counties. So I think that's the appropriate place, or appropriate government agency to provide these services, and indeed they do. And when we have talked about giving funding, like the cannabis money to mental health and to addictions, you know, there's been a lot of support from the other side of the aisle here. They wanted to use it maybe more for social programming or whatever. And I think what we're being asked to do here today is you're asking me and others, everybody on this board, sign the check and we'll fill it in later. I know you, in this information you gave, you say, well, you know, what is actually the levy gonna be? And I think it's, and this is something I will probably ask Mary, if we're gonna approve this, you should have the levy included in it, which you have not done. It should be what's gonna go on the ballot. Not an idea, but what should go on the ballot, including the amount of the levy. So obviously, this is, I think, premature. Or you would have to redo it, and here again, I know I'm gonna hear, we'll fill in the blanks later. Just approve, just sign the check, we'll fill in the amount later. Well, I'm not gonna do that. You know, even the numbers you show, in my area, you show a $300,000 house. Well, you know, there's not too many $300,000 houses that exist in my area, and a lot of others. So that's gonna be $150 additional on their tax bill. I'm looking at this year, could be going anywhere from taxing Will County taxpayers anywhere from $10 to $20 million, depending on what the actual levy is going to be. Because you can give me estimates, but you haven't showed the actual levy and how much that levy generates in revenue. And we all know that with assessments going up the way they have, and the way they're gonna go up in the future, that $150 is gonna turn into $200 or $250. In my area, where probably the average house is more like $400,000, they're probably going to be $200 to $250. You know, but even if it's a $100,000 house, you know, who lives in those houses? You're taxing people who can't afford it at all. At all. You're taxing the poorest people, or the lowest income people in this county. And if they're renters, the rent's gonna go up, which affects, in many cases, people with lower incomes. I think it's kind of a regressive kind of tax when you do this. And I didn't
You're beyond your
hear,
3 minutes, Mr. Mooses, can you come to a close?
I will come to a conclusion. Can I have another 3 minutes? No.
I mean, give them to you.
Since I'm always going, hey, haven't they had the 3 minutes? No. I think it's a duplication of services, or not even services. Everything that was commented was they don't provide services, they hand out money. They hand out grants. They're not providing any mental health services. You're giving it to police departments or whoever they're giving it to. And I realize those programs are important, but it's not providing mental health services. They're not providing them, or drug addictions. They're handing out money. And I think, by the way, that can lead to many conflicts. Thank you, Madam Executive.
Thank you.
I'm a no on this.
County Board Member Gallo.
Thank you. I just want to say that I served on the Public Health and Safety Board Committee for a long time, and I was the chair of it for 4 years. During that time, the Health Department Director, Susan Olenek, has always come forward and provided us some information. I know there's some things that she wasn't able to get out during her 3 minutes, so I would like to ask her to come forward right now and have the opportunity to speak on that, as well as there are other comments I'd like to make. We can hear.
We have a motion to postpone right now, so, I mean.
So we'll wait?
Yeah. This is what you, yeah, you're not waiting in on the postponement. So if we have questions, we'll ask you questions. This is not the appropriate time.
All right, I'll ask
This
you
is-
then.
This
I'll
is, yeah,
ask you
right now,
now.
we're voting, remember, we're just voting on whether or not we should postpone, so.
Right. Okay, so fine, speaking on that, I usually attend the Public Health and Safety Committee meeting on a regular basis. This month I was unable to do that due to various different things. I think it is totally appropriate when asked that we do have the answers to the size of the board, the cost, all the questions that Member Berkowitz asked, we should have those answers. We can't go forward without that. We need to have a full discussion. In my conversation with our minority leader, he has never had this conversation at leadership meetings. How are we bringing forward a referendum that we're going to vote on without even leadership having had those conversations, without having a full conversation, I think, at committee of the whole, so everybody hears everything? To expect everyone to be able to attend a committee meeting is great, but everyone doesn't do it, they can't do it. I think if we're doing something as important as putting a referendum on a ballot, we as members all deserve the right to hear everything, to know and ask all the questions we need to ask prior to making a vote on it. In addition to that, our residents deserve to hear that and have those questions answered as well, because we've had a public hearing on it, conversation, which we have not done except at the Public Health and Safety Committee. I, as the chair, have always made sure that, when I was the chair, I always made sure that everything was brought forward and discussed. But this is, I think, a blatant power play, and I think that we shouldn't do this. We should have the conversation. So we should postpone it at a minimum for another levy. That taxpayers are, every day I'm going door to door to people's houses, and the main thing they say, what can you do to lower my taxes? I don't have an answer for them, because it just seems there's nothing I can do to lower their taxes, and that all we want to do as a board is continue to raise taxes and now add another tax.
Thank you. County Board Member Cook.
Thank you, Madam Executive. I'm noticing some willful obtuseness regarding the comments made by our speaker. This is actually just to put the referendum on the ballot. It's not increasing taxes. You guys may or may not remember, but several years ago, we passed a motor fuel tax, and my Republican colleagues were very vocal about that going to referendum, because if we were going to increase taxes, the voters needed to say yes to it. So I should hope that they would also be in favor of allowing the residents to speak on this referendum. And if it is true that in the many houses and many residents that you've spoken to, that they do not want their taxes to increase under any circumstance, then this is likely to fail in any case. Okay, however, bringing it forward and allowing our residents to speak on it is exactly what's been asked for in the past, so I would hope that we could do that this time. Thank you.
County Board Member Coleman.
Thank you. I'm seconding kind of what Amanda just said, but I have to speak on this because of what the coroner came and spoke on, stating the age of the people who she's seen for the toxicity levels and deaths. There's plenty of examples, too, were given today. 2 people came and spoke. There's been information in the packet. There's a cap. We talk a lot about mental health. Mental health is not just going to a therapist or receiving some type of services. I receive mental health services, been receiving them for a long time as a veteran. There's other things that need to be supported that keeps young people's mental health in a better place. There's a gap in understanding generations because people are on social media when they're born now. And through the ages of 20-something, that's a completely different demographic who face mental health issues that we have no ideas about. And so when we think about, oh, we're just giving money to organizations to help, that's a good thing because these organizations are in the community, they're seeing the people on a regular basis, and it's supporting the health department. Some of these funds can go back to the health department. And there's also a cap, if I'm not mistaken, on what the levy would be. So I am completely against postponing voting for this because there is a higher need than some of us realize in these communities that are not getting the attention they need when it comes to mental health. Thank you.
County Board Member Mitchell.
I'm not even gonna belabor it. Let's go, I have nothing to add to it. Apparently my colleagues want to move forward with it, and obviously some of my colleagues do not. So I'm just gonna be, for postponement. That's it, thank you.
Thank you. County Board Member Pretzel.
You have to pass it to find out what's in it. That's what I'm hearing here. And I've heard it before, I didn't like the end result. I've committed to my constituents that I will oppose any new taxes. I scratch my head in disbelief that all of you are willing to go to your constituents at this time with a new tax or even a proposal for a new tax. I'll be opposing this. I support postponing it indefinitely. That's all. Thank you.
County Board Member Newquist.
Mr. Mustis asked who lives in these $100,000 houses. Well, I do. Most of my neighbors do. I live in a very underserved community, and I am very willing to trust my voters to decide if they want to allocate additional funds for mental health services or not. Thank you.
County Board Member Brooks.
Madam Executive, as you have stated several times, discussion right now is whether or not we want to vote on the postponement. And my answer is this. Even though Public Safety Committee is a smaller group of us, the bigger body is 26. However, there's over 700,000 residents in Will County, which is a much bigger body than we are. I think the power is in the people. Send it to the referendum and let them take all their comments on today into consideration, and they vote yes or no. Thank you.
Thank you. County Board, and I'm not going in order just because there's people who have come up for a second time, so I'm trying to give everyone to be able to speak first. County Board Member Tyson.
Thank you, Madam Executive. I think people should think in terms of let the voter decide. They're intelligent people, we represent them, they tell us what they want, put it on the ballot, let them decide. Thank you.
County Board Member Berkowitz, it's her second time. Nope, she turned me off.
Thank you. All right, so I have, again, looked at my packet, and I see a corrupted file. I see a couple other documents. However, I do not see any information in respect to the questions that I presented. So again, even if we postpone it, these are questions that should be answered, and I would like to have them, the information provided today. It must be available because Commissioner Ventura indicated that it's in the packet. So given that I can't put my hands on it, can you please provide it? Thank you. And also the cost for bringing a referendum forward. I also asked if we had any information about that. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, County Board Member Ventura. Sorry.
No, it's okay, thank you. I'll make my comments about the postponement first, and then I will answer Jem and Julie's questions. Several residents from DuPage Township, Joliet Township, and Wheatland Township have approached me about this. They've also approached your speaker. There are 2 people currently downstairs who are also advocating this with banners, and when Ron Melko came and spoke to our committee, he spoke about how the funding could be spent on public uses like our health department and other services governments provide, private uses, and nonprofit uses. That is for the board to decide on those if one was to be created. We heard from our coroner today, and we all know and have seen increase in suicide, drug overdose, and yes, gun violence across our country. Raquel specifically asked me a few months ago, what are we doing about teen suicide? And we have been aggressively trying to address that, and this is one of those answers. Mimi did ask us to discuss it at Public Health and Safety. Our staff has supported this. When Sue spoke at our committee, she had supported this, and her one ask was that we not defund the current health department in order to fill the gaps of where we are missing it in mental health. And while we do provide mental health services, it does not provide services for everybody. I now hear that Mike Frizzlone is threatening to defund her, and I can't help but think that might be one reason that Sue came before us with a different opinion today. Ultimately, this is a vote, the power of the people to decide. To Amanda Cook's point, yeah, there is some willful ignorance happening in this room, everything from being rude when our speakers this morning were talking over them, to not reading our packet or the certifying of the question in front of us, and then also just completely ignoring that this is not the county board raising taxes. This is the county board asking our community and our residents and our constituents to vote with their own money. Right? This is not a raise in taxes. So the muddying of the waters, no one has said that our health department is not doing their job. Quite the opposite. We want to have a dedicated funding source for those services, and we can expand those services for people who need them. The county board is not raising taxes. This is not the board raising taxes. There is a huge difference between raising taxes and levying and having a referendum. Actually, what Mike is suggesting us do is raise taxes. It's exactly what he said. We're not doing that. We're giving the vote to the people. These are for the dedicated mental health. So to the ARPA funding, that's temporary. When that money is gone, it's gone. Much of our mental health, substance abuse and behavioral services are grant funded. The state and federal government at any moment could decide to change that funding, and that would impact our services substantially. If we had a dedicated funding source for that, there would be no question on whether we would continue these services or not. Again, this is a power to the voters. We aren't making anyone do anything, to Balaj's point. We are giving the voice to the voters. So, to Jem and Julie, the information is in the packet, but I'm happy to provide that. So the first thing, to Jim's point, on the question we're voting on is certifying the question of the levy. So it says, I'm going to need more than 3 minutes to read this. Okay. Whereas 1 in 5 adults experience mental health illness in a given year, and whereas the Will County Board and Will County Executive seek to improve the health of all Will County residents through high-quality health services, both through the Will County Health Department, the Community Health Center, and with all of our community health care partners. And whereas the cost of providing this quality care has risen over the years and the Will County population continues to grow rapidly, and whereas the Will County Board Public Health and Safety Committee heard presentations from other communities that have approved referendums to create a levy to fund community health mental health boards, also known as 708 boards. And whereas it is the best interest of the citizens of the Will County that quality mental health services are available to all residents and additional funding is necessary to expand access and improve improve the quality of services. And whereas pursuant to Chapter 405 ILCS 20-5, the County of Will is authorized to subject the question to the voters at an election held in accordance with the general election law as to whether the county shall be authorized to levy and collect a tax at the rate not to exceed 0.15% for the purpose of providing community health, mental health facilities and services for the person with a developmental disability or a substance use disorder. Now, therefore, be it ordained that the County Board of Will County, Illinois, that the question of levying and collecting a tax to provide community health facilities and services for the persons with a developmental disability or a substance use disorder shall be submitted to the voters of the Will County at the next general election. Be it further ordained that the proposition shall be substantially the following form, and this is by state statute that this is in there. Shall the County of Will levy an annual tax of not to exceed 0.15% for the purpose of providing community mental health facilities and services, including facilities and services for the persons with a disability, developmental disability, or a substance use disorder? Yes or no? That would be what would be on the referendum. Or on the ballot. Be it further ordained that the corporate authority shall certify the question of the levying such a tax to the proper election official who shall submit the question to the voters at the next election held in accordance with the general election law. And be it further ordained that the preamble of this ordinance is hereby adopted as fully set forth within. This ordinance shall be in full force. Yada, yada. Okay, so now to Julie's questions. What is a Community 708 Mental Health Board authorized to do? Illinois State Statute 405, Illinois Complied Statutes for Mental Health Authorities, May 2006, sets forth the rules of addressing mental health support in Illinois, including the establishment of community mental health boards. Under the statute, community mental health boards are not service providers. Their key role is strategy and planning, allocations of funds, and coordinators and evaluators who provide information, referrals, and bring together agencies and social workers to work on projects for the whole community. In order to meet the needs of those eligible to receive mental health services, the 708 Board has broad authority to act. Some of those powers are as follows: in consultation with and being advised by the Health Department of Human Services shall have the power to contract, repair, operate, maintain, and regulate community mental health facilities to provide mental health services as defined by the local mental health board, including services for persons of a developmental disability or substance use disorder, for residents thereof, and or to contract with any private or public entity which provides those services. It goes on in more depth. I won't read that aspect of it, but how is a mental board selected? Board members are appointed by the chairperson. In our case, it would be the county executive, and it would be confirmed by our board. Who is the head of the governing body? To be a member of the board, you must be a resident of the area covered. Board members are to be representative of interest groups of the community, such as local health planning agencies, hospital boards, lay associations concerned with mental health, developmental disabilities, and substance abuse, as well as the general public. However, no member can be an employee or any other individual receiving compensation from any facility or service operating under contract of the board. As outlined in the statute, 708 board members have significant responsibilities and latitude. By statute, 405 ILCS 20-3A, boards consist of 7 members with the options of appointing 2 additional members. If a successful referendum is held, all members shall be appointed within 60 days of the referendum. Says, how is it determined what to fund? So I don't know if you want me to read that, if you asked about that, but there is a part in here about the cost to the taxpayers. So, how is the Community Mental Health Board funded? Once a referendum has been approved by the voters of the governing body, a levy for the Community Health Board is included in the property tax assessment. The maximum amount of money the board can levy per the statute is 0.15%. Typically, this levy is the primary funding mechanism. However, in addition to the levy, several other options are available for funding. They include gifts and grants from private sources and other federal, state, and local funds consistent with the board's mission. In addition to the board may organize a not-for-profit corporation for the purpose of raising money to be distributed by the board for providing services. So what would it cost to the taxpayers? The maximum amount that could be levied is 0.15% of the assessed value of your property. Assessed values are generally 1/3 the amount of the fair market value of your home. You can find the net taxable value of your home on your tax bill. And then it has a breakdown here that you can see. So this first example they have, it would be $21 of additional tax services for a, what is that, $1 million home. All right, and you heard the man today who said he had $16 a year. If we were to levy the entire max, which the referendum says that because that's what the state statute provides, that does not mean that's what this board would then decide as a levy. But the max would be $90 for $100,000 assessed. So it'd be a $300,000 house at the maximum. So, I mean, there's a lot of information in here. Two other things I will point out is, so talking about that max, under the Illinois law, the maximum property tax rate increase for the board is 0.15% of the property's current assessed value. The actual rate may be significantly less based on the community needs, but never more than 0.15%. The Bloomingdale Township Board assessed 0.0214% in 2019, or $21 on a $300,000 home.
Well, I just got a motion to call the question, but.
Okay,
the last point. She's answering, in fairness, she's answering a board, you know, so are you, as long as, okay, I believe she was trying to answer the questions that were well, so you want that,
The last thing I just want to point is there was also something put in there that talked about the savings of our county. And so what this is for every dollar invested in scaled up treatment for depression and anxiety leads to a $4 return in better health and ability to work, which means our businesses would also be prospering under this. It goes, I mean, there's several examples on here. Every $4 in healthcare costs and $7 in law enforcement and other criminal justice costs are saved. So I really would have hoped that you guys would have read the stuff in the packet and gone through this. This is bipartisan support. There were Republicans who came and presented this at our board.
Hold on, she was speaking, no, she was already speaking. We had someone yell out something, so.
So my concern is that this postponement, as heard by the members today, is not to postpone to understand this better and vote for this for their constituents. It's to kill it. This is a dirty tactic, and it's not appropriate.
Come on, just stick to the point. All right. So we're gonna get ourselves back in order here. So we have a call to question, but we already had someone who had pressed their button. So Joe, you will be our last speaker on this, and then we're gonna call the question. Once someone presses their button, that's how you do it here, folks. So he already had his button pressed. So I'm not. County Board Member Van Dyne.
Thank you, Madam Executive. My intentions were, since I did not speak on this matter, that I was waiting in line for my turn. I would like to call the question. Thank you.
All right, so now remember, we are voting on to postpone this resolution. Madam Clerk, please call.
Mueller. Frizzalone. Newquist. Ogella. Cook. Mustis. Mitchell. Tyson. Gazanfer. Trainier. Fritz. Gould. Van Dyne. Balich. Brooks. Parker. Ventura. Coleman. Markham. Berkowitz. Pretzel. Weigel. Freeman. Cowan.
The motion fails. So at this time, we'll go back to the original, which is certifying the question of the levy of a tax for Community Mental Health Board. Well, we already had, yeah. Okay, so folks, this is, I mean, I get it that we want to just move this along, but as long as we're not repeating what we've already said, I'll be happy to go through, I want people to be able to talk, because this is obviously something that's important. But let's not repeat everything that was just, said, so I have Mustis, Ogala, Trinier, and Balich who want to speak. You've already pressed the button, we'll call it after that, but we do have a motion, and we had a second already to certify the question of the levying of a tax for our community mental health board. We'll start discussion. We're keeping it at 3 minutes too. County Board Member Mustis.
Yeah, I want to say that I did see the numbers. I don't know if it's actually in resolution form, the way it should be, but let's say it is. Because I'd like to see it all in one resolution. I don't know if that's what I'm seeing here. But I'd like to make a motion to amend the motion to that the amount of the levy does not exceed 0.05.
All right, so we now have a motion to amend the levy not to exceed by 0.05 by Mustis, seconded by Ogala.
It's the statute allows you to levy up to that amount. You can levy a lesser amount. Well, you would just change it from the 0.15 to 0.05 is what you would be changing it. If I understand Mr. Musis's motion.
That he said not to exceed
Not to exceed 0.05. And the only thing I'll say is if the numbers you're providing are correct, and it's $150, and I actually think it's more than that, but if it's $150 on a $300,000 house, this would bring it down to basically $50, which I think is probably still a pretty good amount. It'll be in the millions of dollars, for sure. So I think that would be more appropriate. We do not need to tax to the max all the time. And I think it's a good way of getting started if if the voters want to bring this forward. So.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. We're going to have discussion just on the 0.05. If you go off, I'm just going to turn you off. This is just on the 0.05 now.
On the amendment.
The amendment of point. So I'm going to start with Jackie, do you have something on the 0.05 first? Okay.
If that's what the resolution says and that's what the voters pass, I assume then it would take another resolution to move it up to the full amount that currently the state has written into the process. We'd have to do a whole other referendum, not resolution,
Yes.
sorry, referendum. So if we started to run out of funding, is what I'm saying.
Funds. Yeah, Jesus.
Why don't you say that again? We're playing with you, you're hitting it up.
You would have to pass another referendum to increase it. Yes, correct.
Mr. Balich, anything on the 0.05?
Am I on?
You're on.
No, I'm, 0.05 to me is no good either. Hopelessness is probably one of the biggest causes of suicide. And money is one of the biggest causes of hopelessness. So when we're talking about mental health, even a tax of $10 right now for a lot of people is devastating. So, I would be voting for the 0.05 because it looks like the other garbage is gonna pass and this is better than that. But I don't understand why we're doing it at all. We're contributing, in other words, we create a crisis by something and then we're gonna vote to do something to fix the crisis we created. It doesn't make sense. I mean, think about that, guys. Think about the people in your district that can't afford 0.05. How about the people in your district that don't even want to spend an extra dollar for something because they're stretched so bad with money now? So the other side of the aisle, which I'm not trying to be political about it, but one side of the aisle says we don't really care. We don't care about hopelessness of people because we think everybody's got a lot of money. That's what you guys are saying. And I'm sorry, but I can't, I have to vote with Jim on it, but I sure in the hell don't like it. I think it's wrong. I think the whole thing is wrong.
Speaker comment on the .05, yes, okay.
Thank you. Mary, I wanted to ask clarification on the process of the whole thing. So if we passed the referendum with .15, would we then have to, if let's say the referendum passed through the voters, and the voters said, yes, we approve up to .15, would we then at county board have to come back and decide what level under up to and including, but under .15 to tax that?
It would authorize you to levy up to 0.15%, so you could levy something less than that.
So we could decide, and then to Jackie's question, then if, like, let's say then we decided to, at that point, levy .015, in a year from that, could we then say, oh, this is working really well, we'd like to levy more, or we'd like to levy less, or would that have to go back to a full referendum again? Or
Well, what I apologize, I'm not sure of the answer, because under truth and taxation, once you set a levy, you are limited as to how much you can increase it. I am not sure if this particular legislation is subject to truth and taxation. The legislature has passed some that have taken certain levies outside the truth and taxation. But typically it would be, most levies are under the truth and taxation. I am not sure what the numbers would be, so you might be able to raise it some, but you'd be limited as to how much you can raise it.
Okay, so if we, again, so if we put a referendum on the ballot for 0.15%, we're not necessarily, if that passes, we're not necessarily doing 0.15%. We would be coming back to the board to decide what level under that?
Correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
County Board Member Weigel on the .05.
My insurance company says my house is worth $400,000. At 15%, it would cost me $200 a year in increased taxes. At 5%, it would cost me $66 a year. I think that's much more reasonable. Thank you.
County Board Member Ventura on the .05. Are you?
My question is actually to Mary as well. I don't necessarily have a problem with setting it at the .05. My question is more about the legality of it all. My understanding was that the reason that we had to choose this wording of not to exceed 0.15% is because that's what the state is telling us we have to have the wording at. So is there a way to add to that? One, are you sure we can change it to just .05? And two, or should we add to it under the referendum language that says it to be set at .05 for will, or not to exceed .015 for the county? Because my understanding is we set that amount after the referendum passed. If it passes, we don't even know that the referendum would pass.
So you can change the number.
Okay.
Is that the question? You can decide right now to change the number, and then when the voters pass it, then you are limited to that amount.
Okay.
Versus if the voters were to pass the 0.15%, then there's more latitude for the county board to decide, you know, to go over the .05.
I just wanted to make sure that we didn't somehow mess up the referendum by lowering that. So I don't necessarily have a problem with that. I think that we need a dedicated funding source, and if future boards want to increase it, they can do their referendum then. So it's up to the board. If you guys all, if you want .05 or .15, the reason I put .15 there is because it was my understanding that based on the state statute, that's what had to be put in there.
County Board Member Fritz on the .05.
Yes, this is gonna throw a total monkey wrench into it if I'm correct. I believe that once this board is created, I think we're gonna lose all of our authority to pick a number. I think it would be the new board that would determine the exact levy because we're creating a new taxing body. So at that, I mean, every taxing body sets its own levy, to my knowledge and understanding, so I'm also looking for legal clarification on that question.
Mary, can you hear her?
I'm sorry.
Yeah, okay, so she's asking if this becomes a tax, this group of mental health become their own taxing body. Will they become their own taxing body?
The county board would still pass the levy, but they would have control over the funds that come in. It's more like the Board of Health, I think, yeah.
County Board Member O'Gala.
So I think it's so obvious by the questions that are coming out here. The reason why this should have been postponed. These questions should be clear in our minds. Go ahead, roll your eyes all you like. These questions should be clear in your mind, in all of our minds, as to the cost of putting it on the ballot as a referendum. There's a cost to that. There's a cost to all these things. We should have had all these questions done before today, before you're asking us to vote on it. We asked about this to postpone, or now Jim is asking to lower the amount, because we didn't have the opportunity in a full committee of all of us to ask these questions. And that is unfair. That is an unfair thing to ask and bring it forward in the manner in which it's done today.
So there's no more comments, so at this time, we have a motion and a second to limit the levy to .05. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mueller. Frizzalone. Newquist. O'Gala. Cook. Mostis. Mitchell. Tyson. Gazanfer. Trainier. Fritz. Gould. Van Dyne. Balich. Brooks.
You're voting to, the question goes on the referendum to limit it to .05. Where are you at?
I can change. Board Member Mitchell, you wanted,
Okay, so, again, we are voting on, if this goes to referendum, the amount that'll be put on the ballot is, we'll levy at .05, so the county board cannot exceed .05. You're voting right now on this. If this passes, then we will vote on the original resolution as amended with the .05, yeah. Would you like to start over? We're gonna just start over then, so everyone's clear, then, yeah, okay.
okay. Mueller. Frizzalone. Newquist. O'Gala. Cook. Mostis. Mitchell. Tyson. Gazanfer. Trainier. Fritz. Sorry. Gould. Van Dyne. Balich. Brooks. Parker. Ventura. Coleman. Markham. Berkowitz. Pretzel. Weigel. Freeman. Cowan.
So 20 affirmative, the motion carries. So I now need a motion to approve the authorization. Okay, as amended, to place the, I'm trying to, so we are making a motion to certify the question of levying of a tax for Community Mental Health Board as amended. So I have a motion by Ventura, seconded by, County Board Member Brooks. Is there any discussion on the resolution as amended? County Board Member O'Gala.
Thank you. As I tried to do this earlier, but it was the wrong timing. I chaired the Public Health and Safety Committee for 4 years. Prior to that, I was on it for 2 years. It's a total of 6 years of my time served on the county board. During that time, I had the executive director of the health department come forward and bring up all the different things that the health department does provide. It is possible that many people don't understand all the things the health department provides. So I would like 2 things to happen. One, I would like to ask Sue Olenek to come forward and add some additional things which she didn't get to put out the first time because she was limited to 3 minutes, slightly over 3 minutes. And then I have a couple questions I would also like to ask.
Okay, we'll allow you to ask her questions for clarifications if you need. So, I mean, we will, so if you have specific questions for her regarding this, that would be helpful.
Yes, I
okay,
do.
so come on up. Yeah, that's what I mean. Come on up. So you can ask the questions that you need for clarification to help you with this vote.
Thank you. So Sue, while I understand that the health department provides these mental health services, I know there were a couple things that weren't explained or you didn't have the opportunity to speak about. Could you please bring those forward now? Thank you.
So I want to be clear, you know, I've talked about wearing my public health hat here all the time, and I have my public health hat on. And I am not opposed at all to additional services coming into the county. No doubt we need them. But I am concerned about funding being taken away from the health department. We strive very hard to provide good services, great services. We have a large gamut of services. There are very, very few local health departments in Illinois, across the nation, that actually provide behavioral health and mental health services. And then for those to provide the amount and the number of services that we provide, it's unusual. We have many people that come working at the health department and say, you provide behavioral health services? Yes, we do. So we need more services in the community, but I worry about a duplication of services that would affect our funding, that would affect our billing. There was a point in time where we would receive what was called capacity grants. Mr. Moose just brought up the whole grant situation after I spoke. We don't receive capacity grants anymore. That means that the state or DMH, somebody would throw money at us. They'd throw us $600,000 and they'd say, do this program. And we would do it to the best of our ability and spend that money the way we could to provide those services. That's no longer. There aren't capacity grants anymore. Our grants are fee-for-service grants. In other words, even with grants, we have to there are certain deliverables. There are specific things we have to do. We have to bill our services against the grant. We have to also bill our services against Medicaid or Medicare or private insurance. So there is no more just throwing money at us and just see what you can do with it. That's not the way it is anymore. So if we have another entity within the county that's providing a service that we provide, that we bill for, and they're competing with our services, that will affect our revenue. So that was just the other thing I wanted to say since that was brought up. And I would encourage, you know, you all and constituents to find out more about the mental health and behavioral health services that are provided in this county. Speaker Cowan mentioned that this came from a constituent. I don't even know if the constituent knew that the health department provided mental health services. So I would recommend that everybody educate themselves on who does what and how many services are out there and where they are. And the health department is not the only one who provides behavioral and mental health services. There are a lot of other agencies out there. So, a little bit of education is always a good thing. Thank you.
County Board Member Ogala, did you get your questions answered then?
I
Yeah.
did, thank you, Sue. So there is an impact there. One of the other things I wanted to ask, and I think we need to have this answer, and it's not unfair to know this answer, what is the cost to put the referendum on the ballot? What is the cost to put it on the ballot?
So the cost for my office is just to publish it in the newspaper, which can range from, like, for this election and the refs that were on this election, it's like $40 to around $200. But for anybody that wants to put that kind of question on the ballot, they would need to, I would assume, advise their attorney or whatever those costs would be. We don't, the clerk's office doesn't give legal advice, so it would be on whoever wants to put those questions on the ballot to.
So then,
attorneys,
so then, Mary, can you answer the question? What is the cost for the county to put it on the ballot, this referendum?
Well, you're not allowed to either promote or work against it using county funds, so that would be zero. I mean, the cost would be whatever the county clerk has, which she has said publication. I don't know if there's any additional cost for programming the counting of the ballots or anything. They'd have to program in one more question, but whether that's a set fee or what, I certainly can't comment. That would come from the county clerk. I don't know of any other costs. But facts, that the county would want to get facts out there, you can, without either promoting or working against it, you can issue facts about the impact of the referendum.
Which I would assume we would want to do, because it would be fair to let people know why the question's on the ballot and do things like that. Again, I just want to say the fact that I think it is inappropriate that we did not have this conversation anywhere prior to today, except for at a specific committee that everyone does not attend. This is a referendum that we all should be discussing in a full meeting with all our questions answered prior to coming to county board. We should know coming into county board meeting whether we're going to support something or not support something, and all our questions should be answered. This was done in a very political fashion to get something out there, get it done and passed right away without answering the questions. And you don't know, we may have not been worried about it, but we didn't have these questions answered to us. This wasn't discussed even at leadership. If somebody doesn't think that that's wrong, I think it is wrong. I think it's wrong. It's a disservice.
County Board Member Pretzel?
You know, if my house needs a new roof and I don't have enough money in the bank, I have to make some cuts. I don't go to my neighbors and say, give me some more money so I can fix my roof. And I hear things like it's only $200 a year, a month, $10 for the gas tax, $300 for this tax. I mean, it's only, I keep hearing that, and to me it's like saying that it's a small fire in my kitchen or a little water in my basement. There's a bigger problem here, and the problem is we're not living within our means. I'm not opposed to doing more for mental health. I think everybody in my caucus would agree we could do more. But we have to live within our means. We can't keep going back to the taxpayers every time we want something and ask them to foot the bill. Thank you.
County Board Member Mitchell.
This is actually kind of near and dear to my heart. I do care about young people who are wanting to commit suicide, and I do care about mental health and drug addiction. I care about those things. And our board member Ventura said that, I wanted it. Yes, I do. However, and that the waters were muddied. And yeah, they're muddied because it seems like if we don't vote yes for this, then we obviously don't want people to have good mental health and that we don't want to prevent suicides and that kind of thing. That is far from the truth. We actually do. However, we would like to give funds to those things that are already in place and not levy a whole new tax for it. That's what we want. Let's not levy a whole new tax. It's bad enough if we raise the tax. Now we're adding a tax. This is like a slap in the face to the taxpayers. I spent $99 trying to fill up a Honda. $99. We're going to our taxpayers today, or tomorrow, or in November, because we know that the gases are going to go down by November. We're going to go to our taxpayers in November and say, would you like to increase your taxes on top of what you already, on top of a price of a dozen eggs, or on top of a price of a whole chicken? A whole chicken is like $13. And it's like you don't care. It's like you're deaf. You're not hearing what we're trying to put out here. We want to help these people. We want to give them funds. We just don't want to have a whole new tax for it. And I just don't understand why my colleagues on the other side of the aisle don't even want to hear it. They don't even want to listen to it. They don't even feel that. You don't feel that? You said you live in a community with $100,000 homes that are not doing well, or they're not financially, well off or whatever. You live in that kind of community, and that's what you want to do? Do you think that somebody who has to pay $2 or $3 a dozen for eggs want to spend an extra any money? The property taxes went up. That's a doggone. Property taxes went up. That's a doggone shame, especially for people who are on a fixed income. We're talking. I have the ability. I'm young enough. I have the ability to go out and get a second, third, fourth job, whatever. But what about the 80-year-olds who can't do that? You think they can afford another $10? No, nothing in your heart. Nothing in your heart says, okay, this is okay, this is not okay. Nothing.
County Board Member Mitchell, let's address the question, not the people.
I'm done.
All right, thank you. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 more speakers. Remember, this is regarding, you've said it already, I'm sure you don't have to say it again, but I will, if you have to answer questions, that's fine, or some clarifications. I know people are getting antsy walking in and out, but we're gonna come to a vote soon, so. County Board Member Ventura.
I'll keep this brief. I just want to clarify for the record some questions with Sue. First, I think that we can all agree that the value in the services of the health department are invaluable, and I would hope that there would be dedication from every member in this board to fund your services. So I'm a little concerned with the comments I'm hearing too, and I can understand your concerns. In committee, we discussed some of that, but we also discussed that the state statute limits the ability of duplicate services. Did we discuss that in committee, that that's not available, that they can't come and take duplicate services from what you provide already?
That was discussed, but, I don't know if it's ever enforced. Honestly, I don't. I don't.
Okay, and in committee, we also talked about the gaps in services that exist already. Can you tell us what you told us in committee?
Yes, there are some gaps in services. One is the living room setup, where you have kind of an area, you've got a building, you've got a site where individuals who need to talk to somebody, maybe they're, I don't know, not necessarily all the way in crisis, but they are feeling like they need to speak to somebody, they would go there, they would be assessed, then they would speak with a clinician, kind of de-escalate their situation. They'd be assessed before they leave, and then they would leave. And that might prevent somebody going out and, doing drugs or going out and causing harm to somebody else. So that is something that we don't have in Will County. The other thing is we do need more residential hospital beds. That is true. When the state closed the Tinley Park Mental Health Hospital, left a huge hole. We still see the effects of that hole. Another thing that, from my understanding, that 708 boards can do is bring in services for those with developmental disabilities. the health department does not have any specific programs for developmental disabilities, although those services are in the county, like, you know, Easter Seals, and I'm sure there's others. I don't recall if there was anything else, but that, I recall saying those things.
Yeah, absolutely. And then the last question I have is, in committee, we also discussed this, but you are aware that the health department can also receive the funds from this levy, is that correct?
Yes, I understand that.
Okay, so for those reasons that Sue just mentioned, I encourage every board member to vote yes on this. Again, it gives the option to the voters. If they want this, they can vote yes on the referendum. If they don't, they can vote no. This is only providing, saying that the county values mental health, and we're giving the option to the voters. Thank you, Sue.
County Board Member Parker.
Thank you. I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask this anyway. Listening to Sue's comments, if this referendum goes on the ballot and it passes, does it have to go to a 708 board? It just can't go to, okay, so I figured, okay.
You have to create a board within 60 days, and the money has to go to the 708 board.
Okay, thank you.
County Board Member Berkowitz.
Thank you, Madam Executive. I asked specific questions, and one of the biggest concerns I have is that we are literally taking another county's plan and their numbers and their figures and their rhetoric, and we're pushing this forward. There's no plan or no thoughtful conversation regarding Will County. Will County is not DuPage County. We have unique characteristics, we have unique challenges, we have similar challenges, but I don't see a Will County plan here. I see a compressed League of Women Voters, Downers Grove, Lyle Woodridge, 708 study report. Now, to me, that's a bit lazy. And after listening to the director of our Will County Health Department, which, having had a family experience this year, I appreciate their professionalism, their service all around. I don't feel that we're listening or weighing the impact of the advice she's given us. I'm concerned about that. I want to be able to have the time to listen to her concerns and her recommendations. The last thing I'm going to say is that, like the motor fuel tax and the legalization of cannabis, we went out and we provided town halls to our residents. And I'm sure there was a cost to that, because we had to have staff and if the facility had to be rented. But that's part of the process. If this passes today, then I'm going to request that we have again for this particular item, because we need to get this out to the public. We can't just have them walk into the booth on election day and say, what is this? So, thank you very much.
Thank you. County Board Member Mustis.
You know, budgeting and taxation is all about priorities. And obviously you're saying, well, we think this is a priority and the public will see it that way and they will vote additional tax in. You know, Sue mentioned earlier about we increased her levy. And I supported that, and actually I think that I kind of spearheaded that levy at the time, because I seen the real need. But you know what that means is readjusting the priorities of the county. Because we increase the health department levy, of course that affects the other levies, because we're still capped for the total. But it certainly demonstrates priorities. And this board has the ability to do that. We're we're entering the budget, processing, period. Along with that goes the levy. If we feel it's that important, and I think it is that important, then change the levy to the health department and let them provide the services. You don't need to raise more taxes. You just need to reprioritize what we already have. And by the way, I think that the revenue increases are gonna be fairly substantial. And I might also add, as Mike mentioned, we have all this ARPA money, and certainly, even though it's a temporary, we can certainly, here again, make the health department and how they provide services in the mental health area. We don't need to redo the wheel, folks. Let's set the priorities, what we have. And I personally am gonna vote no, but I don't think we need additional resources. We have them. You just need to set the priorities for the county. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, County Board Member Mustis. Oh, I'm sorry, Trinier. Sorry, I know you. I like to hear your voice. Soothing.
We have the ARPA funds, you're right. We've been sitting on them for a year and a half. They haven't gotten out to the community, and we see more and more deaths each and every week. By the time we get this money out there, there'll be even more deaths. And, you know, mental health is not something you fix like paving a road. It takes a long time, just like the intersection of Weber and 55. 14 years I've been on this board, and it's not done yet. If, in fact, November comes and they pass this, it's going to take a long time to get this board put together. It's going to take some time for them to make some decisions. Then we're going to have to wait for the next levy because, well, clearly we will have missed that levy. We're talking about money that isn't even coming for several years, if at all. Maybe, you know, in your world, maybe by then, because of the ARPA funds, we won't need it. And then they won't need to levy. We won't need to levy. But we're not even giving ourselves that opportunity, and we're trying to shut down the voice of the very people that we claim to represent. Thank you.
So thank you. We have we almost were there, Judy. Go ahead.
All right.
2 minutes.
So I always do want to represent the voice of the people. In the past, we have seen things such as the gas tax come forward. I attended many of the gas tax forums that were around the county, and people loudly said, no, don't do it. We taxed them. The cannabis tax. I was opposed to legalization of cannabis because of personal experiences within my life. But then we wanted to provide a safe source for people who do choose to use cannabis. What do? We're going to tax them. That makes it more expensive. So they have gone and still buy cannabis off the street rather than going somewhere and paying more than they were currently paying. Those things happen. In addition to that, we discussed redistricting, where many people came forward.
Judy, you have to stay on the topic, please.
Oh, this is about not listening to the people.
Okay, but
This
we're
is
voting
about
on,
listening to
Judy,
the people.
please,
and
okay,
hearing
we
what the
need to
people have
vote,
to say.
address the
I know we
topic.
have,
Just a border, yeah.
I know we do have to. So here's yet another question. This board, this mental health board, is this a paid board or is it not paid? So again, though, another question that could have been answered before today. Stop telling me to read my packet. Stop telling me that. It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous to insinuate that the members of our caucus haven't read our packet because we have questions. We have questions that need to be out there. The public has the right to hear our questions. The media has the right to report on these questions. And we have the right to have it recorded in a meeting somewhere so people understand what we're talking about. All we're asking for is fairness here. This is an unfair process that is being pushed through by the majority caucus. This is something that has continued since you guys got majority. And we hadn't done that on our side prior. You weren't here. You don't know it. Please stop telling me and telling us what we have done or what we should do. We're all adults, we know what to do to be a board member, a good board member. And I forgot the answer to that question, so please, is this a paid board? Thank you.
It is not. All right, so we are, right now, we have a motion and a second to certify the question of levying a tax for a community mental health, as amended with a .05 limit. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Mueller. Frizzalone. Newquist. Ogalla. Cook. Mustis. Mitchell. Tyson. Gazanfer. Trainier. Fritz. Gould. Van Dyne. Balich. Brooks. Parker. Ventura. Coleman. Markham. Berkowitz. Pretzel. Weigel. Freeman. Cowan.
With 13 members voting in favor, the motion carries. Nope. You're going on to your next issue. Okay, there we go.
Sorry, I also have 22-163, authorizing the county executive to execute an intergovernmental agreement with the Township of Joliet to provide animal control services for the county, and I so move.
Motion by Ventura, seconded by